Let's bring in James Patterson now. He's a Liberal Senator and Shadow Minister for Cyber Security and Countering Foreign Interference. James, thanks for your time. We think of Five Eyes often about just the intelligence sharing, but these law enforcement security chiefs shows where the rubber hits the road, so to speak.
That's right, Kieran, and congratulations to you on what is a very significant interview with all of those law enforcement chiefs. And I think you're right. I think when we think about the cooperation we have with our Five Eyes partners, it's typically in the signals intelligence realm or the human intelligence realm in that intelligence space. But the law enforcement cooperation we have is just as significant, and it's terrific to see the Australian initiative leading the way, getting together those Five Eyes law enforcement partners here and telling a bit of the story, because I think a number of things are really important from that interview. Firstly, that serious organised crime is a national security threat. I completely agree. That serious organised crime is operating on a multinational basis in much of the way that corporations do, and that some hostile foreign states are actively facilitating or at least harbouring and tolerating that serious organised crime, and we need to think about the way in which we respond when that happens.
Yeah, really blunt comments, weren't they, from Paul Abate, the Deputy Director of the FBI there, signalling out the countries that are, as you say, facilitating and at times not just turning a blind eye to the crime, but fostering it.
I think it was appropriately blunt, and it is important that the public understand the challenges that we are grappling with. A previous example on the public record is when the Director General of the Australian Signals Directorate, Rachel Noble, said that in the Microsoft Exchange hack, that the Chinese government effectively facilitated criminal actors to take advantage of the vulnerabilities they identified and made available in computer systems all around the world, and that was one example. But there are other examples in the physical world that the FBI Deputy Director talked about there, where very sophisticated, very large-scale criminal operations, for example, involved in the manufacturing of precursors to illegal drugs, are allowed to operate with impunity. And it's particularly interesting when they're able to continually operate at such high levels of sophistication and such a large scale in a country like China, which has a government which is normally all-seeing and all-knowing, which has the most sophisticated technological surveillance state on the planet. I think it's pretty hard to say they don't know that's going on, and so there's obviously some decision made at some level to allow it to continue for whatever reason.
When you look at this engagement between the security officials from the Five Eyes nations, they've been here all week, as you said, chaired by the Federal Police Commissioner, Rhys Kershaw. The people-to-people connection there, is that important in this realm of security and intelligence sharing, that they can know each other well, pick up the phone when there are issues that arise of pertinence to another country, one of our allies?
It's critically important, Kieran. Our law enforcement agencies, just like our intelligence and security agencies, are becoming increasingly interoperable. They do that through deployment of officers internationally in each other's partner agencies, and that is a really good connection. They do it in the digital realm with the instantaneous sharing of intelligence about threats and the threat environment. But it's important that it goes beyond that, and that there's strong interpersonal relationships at the top of these organisations that form very close bonds, because we're going to need to work collectively together more often in the future, not less often, because we are dealing with these transnational threats that are operating almost like a sophisticated multinational corporation that have very sophisticated legal advice and accounting services and financial structures, and they're moving money and goods and illegal products like drugs all around the world, and we could not possibly meet that challenge on our own. We have to meet that together with like-minded countries like the Five Eyes, but not only the Five Eyes, we also have other important international corporations with close like-minded partners.
And just finally, we saw that in effect with Operation Ironside and the cracking of Anon, one of the encrypted services used by organised crime. But I just wonder, and I asked them during that discussion, are we just scratching the surface here in terms of knowing what sort of communication is happening out there?
Operation Ironside was an incredibly creative and innovative strategy to bust open what are these very difficult to penetrate criminal networks when they're using peer-to-peer messaging services that are both anonymised and encrypted, and often occur on devices that exist for no other purpose except for that communication. It's a very difficult technical challenge, but it's one that we've been able to crack in Ironside, and it's something that we're constantly working on, because that sophisticated way of communicating is also constantly evolving in both criminal gangs, but also terrorist organisations and others who seek to do harm to us. So again, we couldn't do that if we didn't have partners like the FBI, who we work with incredibly closely on Operation Ironside, and the way in which we share those technological innovations and share those legislative tools that we develop in each of our countries to make sure that we are on par and on parity with them is an incredibly important part of our success.
And I think Commissioner Lucky from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police sort of alluded to just that, how much she'd picked up in terms of the legislative approach from the Allies this week. James Patterson, you've got to go. I appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.